Alright guys, this is the third 9-week study guide. So the first thing is Tennessee and slavery. Well, to know about Tennessee and slavery, we need to know that West and Middle Tennessee were relatively flat lands where many plantations were. Citizens of West and Middle Tennessee were pro-slavery. That means they were for slavery. Citizens of East Tennessee lived in the hills and mountains of Appalachia, so they were in the Appalachian Mountains, rocky. They're not going to need slaves because you can't really farm in rocky soil. They had little need for it and did not care either way. As far as secession is concerned, those are two linked things, slavery and secession. Because West Tennessee and Middle Tennessee needed slavery, they're going to vote to secede or leave after the Battle of Fort Sumter because they thought Abraham Lincoln was going to put an end to slavery. East Tennessee voted the opposite. They voted heavily against secession, but with West and Middle voting for secession, Tennessee seceded or left the Union and joined the South. All right, the Union is simply the 24 states of the North that wanted to put an end to slavery and keep the country together. The Confederacy is the 11 southern states that seceded to preserve states' rights, which was the main deal they were trying to preserve. But one of the rights they were trying to preserve was slavery, so you cannot get out of slavery or remove slavery from this idea. Then you have the Battle of Nashville. It's one of the largest victories achieved by the Union Army. The Army of Tennessee was destroyed, never fight again. Confederate John Bell Hood resigned his command, so that's big. The biggest thing is the Army of Tennessee was destroyed. All right, Stones River, that's in Murfreesboro. Excuse me. Union victory. North was in control of Central and Middle Tennessee after this battle. The Battle of Franklin, of course, was in Franklin, Tennessee. It was a Union victory. It completely demolished part of the Confederate forces. They lost 6 generals, which was a big deal. Because think about a team losing its coach. It's going to be chaos. It's going to be hectic. And they lost a third of their men. The Battle of Fort Donelson. It was on the Cumberland River. It was a key victory for Union General Ulysses S. Grant. It's going to kind of push him to being the general overall for the North. It secured the North's hold on Kentucky and paved the way for Grant's deeper attack into Tennessee. All right, the Freedmen's Bureau. This was an organization that was created to aid newly emancipated or newly freed slaves. They provided food, clothing, medical care, education, legal support. They gave them land. Its achievements were not every slave experienced that because it really depended on who was handing out that information and handing out that stuff. William Blount. He was a governor of the Southwest Territory who called the meeting at which the Constitution of Tennessee was written. He was one of the first senators from Tennessee. Now, he was the governor of the Southwest Territory, not the state of Tennessee. All right, Tennessee became a state on June 1st, 1796. John Sevier was the only governor of the state of Franklin, and he was Tennessee's first governor when it became a state on June 1st, 1796. Knoxville used to be White's Fort, the first capital of the state of Tennessee. Andrew Jackson, he was a president from 1829 to 1837. He put in place the Indian Removal Act, and he was the hero of the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. His nickname was Old Hickory. He is the first president from the great state of Tennessee. All right, the Battle of Horseshoe Bend. It was fought during the War of 1812 in central Alabama. It was on March 27, 1814. The U.S. forces and Indian allies under Jackson defeated Red Sticks. He was a part of the Creek Indian tribe that was inspired by Tecumseh. This ended the Creek War as part of the War of 1812. That was that was the battle that Andrew Jackson became a war hero. Tennessee Volunteers. They were men who fought in the Creek War when Andrew Jackson called for them and men who came to the Alamo to fight with the Texans for independence. This is where the state of Tennessee got its nickname, the Volunteer State. That's why the University of Tennessee sports teams are known as the Vols. Go Big Orange. All right, the Trail of Tears. This was a time period, 1838 to 1839, where 15,000 Cherokees, along with other Indians, were forced from their home in Georgia and Alabama to Indian Territory and Oklahoma. 4,000 Cherokee died. Creek, Chickasaw, Choctaw, and Seminole were some of the other groups forced to leave. All right, the Indian Removal Act of 1830 was what caused the Trail of Tears. It removed all Indians east of the Mississippi to an Indian territory where they would be permanently housed. They were first asked to voluntarily give up their land, and then they were forced to. Jackson Purchase, we're just going to skip over this. This is what actually Jackson bought part of West Tennessee and Western Kentucky. Davy Crockett is a former volunteer colonel and member of Congress of the U.S. from Tennessee. He arrived with a dozen men to join the fight in Texas at the Alamo and ended up dying at the Alamo. Sam Houston, he was commander of the Texas Army at the Battle of San Jacinto. He was later the president of the Republic of Texas. Sam Houston is going to be a governor of Tennessee and Texas and is the only man to ever hold or be voted a governor of two different states. All right, Texas War of Independence. This was the rebellion of Texans against Mexican rule that resulted in Texas becoming an independent nation. So the Texans decided they didn't like Mexico because Mexico was going to outlaw slavery, and they were passing laws that they didn't like, so they just decided to rebel against Mexico, and that's where Sam Houston and Davy Crockett come in. Davy Crockett defends the Alamo. Sam Houston beats Santa Anna at the Battle of San Jacinto and becomes a war hero, and that's really helped Texas win its independence. All right, James K. Polk. Some consider the best president because he said, I'm going to do A, B, C, and D. He did A, B, C, and D in 4 years, and then he did not seek re-election. He was elected president in March 1845. He wanted to settle Oregon boundary dispute with Britain, wanted to acquire California, wanted to incorporate Texas. He believed in manifest destiny, and he was the second president of the great state of Tennessee, or from the great state of Tennessee. All right, Alexander Graham Bell invented the telephone. George Washington Carver was the peanut man. He researched improved farming in the South by developing new products using peanuts. Thomas Edison, he perfected the light bulb. He wasn't the one that invented it, even though a lot of people say it and some of our questions do, but he perfected it. Andrew Carnegie founded Carnegie Steel. He's extremely wealthy. He helped build up the American steel industry. Henry Ford, of course, founder of the Ford Motor Company. He was the one that came up with the assembly line and really used it. Tennessee, the Yuchi word that was translated and changed from Creek to Cherokee and finally written down by Europeans. It means meeting place, bends of the river, or where two rivers meet. All right, this was the road that traveled westward over the Appalachian Mountains into Kentucky. It was blazed or cut through by Daniel Boone. All right, William Bean was an early Tennessee settler. He built a cabin on the Boones Creek in the Watauga River areas. Thomas Walker was the first to explore the Cumberland Gap. He gave it its name, so he is the one that gave the name to the Cumberland Gap. Thomas Sharp Spencer was this big old burly dude. He was the first white settler in Middle Tennessee. He lived alone in the hollow of a giant sycamore tree at Bledsoe's Lick and is known for his physical strength. Watauga, the first lasting settlement in Tennessee. It was built along the banks of the Watauga River. James Robertson helped settle it. It's the first settlement. It's now known as Elizabethton. All right, the Cumberland settlement renamed Fort Nashboro in honor of General Francis Nash, who was eventually killed in a battle during the American Revolution. It is now called Nashville and is our state capital. All right, James Robertson was the leader of the early group of pioneers who traveled by water and settled at that's supposed to be Fort Nashboro, sorry about that. But he was traveled by water and settled at Fort Nashboro. Overmountain men. These were Westerners who crossed the Blue Ridge, or the Appalachian Mountains, and trapped the Tories, or the British soldiers at the Battle of Kings Mountain. 900 Overmountain men defeated 1,100 to 1,300 British soldiers. It inspired or re-energized the rest of the colonies to keep fighting. It forced General Cornwallis up to Yorktown. All right, the Coates Hine site was where they found mastodon skeletons that showed marks that were made by Paleo Indians. Showed that the Paleo Indians lived in North America. Old Stone Fort were old stone walls found in Manchester. They were used for ceremonies. It proved that the archaic and woodland Indians were present in Tennessee. The woodland Indians. This is the third prehistoric Native American culture in Tennessee. They developed the bow and arrow, pottery. They were the ones that built small mounds, like Pinson mounds. The largest group of woodland Indians mounds used for burials were found in Jackson, Tennessee, or Pinson. That's why they're called Pinson mounds. The Mississippians. We're just going to skip over that. That's really not on there. Chucalissa Indian Village. It's just outside of Memphis. It was created by the Mississippian Prehistoric Group. Contains many homes. It's pretty neat if you ever get a chance to go. Pinson Mounds and Old Stone Fort. They really showed that the complex societies lived in Tennessee. That's really big. The Cold War. Now, this is what I need you to understand. This is part of our goals. Is a conflict that was between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. The nations never directly fought. That's why it's called a Cold War. If it was a hot war, they would have actually directly fought. But deadly threats went on for years. The space race. This is important. Listen to me. If you're listening, listen. This is part of the thing. We're trying to get our goal and meet our goal. It was a competition. The space race was a competition of space exploration between the U.S. and Soviet Union. It started when the Soviet Union launched Sputnik. That was the first man-made satellite in outer space. The launching of Sputnik started the space race. All right, the Berlin Wall was built by the communists to keep citizens of East Berlin in East Berlin. It had nothing to do with keeping people out of East Berlin. It wanted to keep everybody in because they didn't want them to leave and go to West Berlin or Western Germany. All right, the Berlin Airlift was a joint effort by the U.S. and Britain to fly food and supplies into West Berlin after the Soviet Union blocked off all ground routes. So they took planes. I think we said in class that a plane left every 30 seconds for quite a bit of time. All right, the World War II. This is important too. The Axis power. This is what I need you to know. I need you to stare at this slide. Germany, Italy, Japan. They were totalitarian, which means governments, which means one person or one group had total power. Total power. They had aggressive foreign policies, which means they were very aggressive about taking over land. Germany took over Poland that started World War II. Italy took over land in Africa. Japan started taking over all the islands, and they built up their army. So Germany, Japan, Italy were totalitarian. One person ruled everything. They started taking over land in their foreign policy, and they built up their armies. All right, World War II. Remember, it started when Germany invaded Poland. Pearl Harbor got the U.S. involved in the war. The Holocaust was the Nazi program of exterminating Jews under Hitler. We talked very briefly about that. World War I. So war fought from 1914 to 1918 between the Allies. So between France, Britain, Russia, and Italy, and the United States, and the Central Powers were Germany, Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, and the Ottoman Empire. Remember, it all started because this guy from Austria-Hungary got killed, Franz Ferdinand. All right, Lusitania was a British passenger ship with Americans on board. This is when the Germans sunk it using a U-boat or submarine, and it killed killed a bunch of Americans and made the Americans mad and helped turn the United States into wanting to go to war. So did the Zimmerman telegram. This was a telegram sent from Germany to Mexico to convince the Mexico to attack the U.S. Great Britain intercepted it and told the U.S., and as you can probably guess, the U.S. was not happy about it. All right, Great Depression. Stock market crash caused the Great Depression. The economy of the world dropped. We were overproducing goods in World War I. So when we had such this high supply, there's so many of all these goods, the prices were low, and it caused businesses to have trouble. Millions of people are going to lose their jobs as banks and businesses closed around the world. People are going to be homeless. They're going to rely on the government to eat. And that's going to lead to the New Deal. This is the name of President Roosevelt's program for getting the United States out of the Great Depression. He was going to pour money into the economy, have jobs, have people building something, and hopefully bring the United States out of the Great Depression. But what's going to ultimately bring the United States out of the Great Depression is World War II. So again, I know look at the Cold War slide, look at the stuff about Japan, Germany, and Italy. Just really look at those and go back over those. Those are the things we're setting goals. Other than that, if you paid attention in here and you pay attention yesterday in our review and tomorrow in our review, you should be in good shape. All right. And so just make sure you're studying the best you can, and good luck on your 9 weeks test.